The last home. When the girl was sold, it didn't make her sad. She was used to it by.
She went home with a lady who gave her to a man, and then the man gave her to an old woman, and then she was given back to the man. An endless row of faces. Just like always. She didn't care. The man gave her a name. She was used to that too. Every new place come with a new name and new rules and people to hid from. Her name now was Valerie, which the man had said been his mom's name. He had asked her if she liked it, and the girl had told him yes. The man made her sleep in a big room in a bed that was as soft as anything she had ever felt. There were blanket and book and a teddy bear that was bigger than she was, and the man said she was allowed to touch all of it. The girl didn't touch anything unless she had to, and at night she lay as still as possible, wide or awake and alert, waiting for something to happen. The man's name was Henry. Mr. Henry went to work every day, and when he did, he left the girl with the old woman, who was named Maria. Ms. Maria made her eat a lot and asked her to draw thing for her. The girl was careful not let her guard down, and only ate exactly what she was told and drew exactly what she was told. In the room the girl slept in was a big closet. It was supposed to be for clothes, but there was plenty of room for the girl to hide in there, which she did at night sometimes. If was safer there rather than in the big open room. When she hid, no one could find her, and that was almost as good as if she could be invisible. The girl would have to be invisible. If she was invisible, no one would be able to tell if she was doing something wrong, and maybe they would forget she was there completely, and if they forget about her, then they wouldn't want to her or kick her or put out cigarettes on her skin or all the other things adults like to do. Mr. Henry and Ms. Maria hadn't done that to her yet, but the girl knew it was only a matter of time. They looked at each other for a long time, and the girl didn't look away even though her body was so tense with fear that it could have killed her. And then Mr. Henry asked, "Do you want to learn how to shoot?" He took her to a shooting range, where she wore plastic glasses and ear protection and learned how to hold the gun in a safe way. Mr. Henry got her a small gun that wasn't too big and heavy, and then he told her that from now on, they would lock their guns in a safe instead of leaving them around the apartment when they weren't using them. Mr. Henry taught her to fight, too, with a punching bag in the gym, and Valerie got used to hearing her new name. So many people were using it for her now. It was Mr. Henry and Ms. Maria, but also Mr. Richard, who was Ms. Maria's husband, and then Ms. Maya, who was the lady who had bought Valerie and given her to Mr. Henry, and Mr. Aaron, who was Ms. Maya and Mr. Aaron's children. So many people, and they all spoke to her and used her name, and none of them yelled or hurt her. The girl knew it wouldn't last. She had been sold many times, and she knew better than to think anyone would keep her. She reminded herself of that, over and over, even as the room she slept in seemed less dangerous with each passing night, until one night she fell asleep in the bed. She woke herself screaming, and then Mr. Henry was rushing into her room with a gun in his hand. He looked wildly around the room. "What wrong?" he asked, looking wildly around the room. "What happened?" Valerie didn't know how to answer. She had never woken up like that before. There was almost nothing that could make her scream. Mr. Henry lowered his gun and come to at the edge of the bed. "Did you have a nightmare?" He hugged her, and she was shaking crying, and she couldn't stop. "But me." Henry didn't get mad or strangle her to make quiet. He just held her until he was gone in the morning. She woke up with a sore throat. It felt like something was stuck there, and it didn't help no matter how much she coughed. Ms. Maria asked if she had a cold and touched her forehead and said she wasn't hot, so Valerie supposed that meant she was cold. Ms. Maria told her to lay on the couch and drink tea until Mr. Henry came back home. The pain didn't go away. Valerie was coughing all the time, and one time, it was so bad she thought she was going to throw up. She covered her mouth with her hands like the grown-up told her, and when she looked, there was a small, white petal there, stained with red. She held the petal in her hand and felt her stomach sink with nausea. She knew what this meant. She had seen people with the flower sickness before. They coughed and then they died. Something if took a long time, the flowers slowly growing bigger, until the person choke on them, and sometimes it didn't happen like that. The girl could still remember the blood spreading across the floor after the woman was caught hiding her illness. Valerie knew what this meant. It meant she was no longer worth keeping. No one was in the room with her, so they didn't know she's sick. They didn't know she was sick yet. As soon as they knew they would get rid of her, so Valerie put the pedal in her mouth, find if she could hide, if she could stay died, decided. Then she wouldn't have to be sold again. She wondered what if would be like to die. Would it be like sleeping? Or would she be awake, like when she was drugged, unable to move or speak or anything? Or maybe she would turn into a ghost, and could stay here forever, invisible. That didn't sound so bad. She would be a ghost and hide in the wardrobe, and no one would even know she was there. When she hadn't stopped coughing for over a week, Mr. Henry wanted to make to take her to the doctor. He even tried to grab her arm and force her, but Valerie screamed and kicked and twisted until he lost his grip, and then she ran into the bathroom and locked the door until he promised they could wait a few days. Valerie had coughed up a whole little rosebud that morning. She didn't know exactly how long it would take for her to die, but hopefully it would be less than a few days. Less than it would take for Mr. Henry to take her to the doctor. But Mr. Henry wait like he had promised. The next morning, interested of bringing Valerie to the doctor, he brought the doctor home. Valerie tried to hide under the bed, but Mr. Henry pulled her out and held her still and forced her to open her mouth so the doctor could look. Valerie screamed and struggled with everything she had. It had been a long time since she had been held like this, all hard and painful and scary. She was helpless, and Mr. Henry and the doctor were just like any other adult who could do anything they wanted to her. "I'm done," the doctor said, and Mr. Henry loosened his grip. Valerie twisted away and looked for anywhere she could hide. Under the bed didn't work, and the closet was too close, and she was too big hide under the carpet event, though that's where she most wanted to go. So she went to the furthest window and wrapped the she went to the furthest window and wrapped the curtains around herself until she was completely gone. The adults were talking, but Valerie closed her eyes and covered her ears and pretended no one else was there, pretended nothing had happened, that no one knew that she was sick, wouldn't be sent away. She didn't know how long it had been when Mr. Henry rusted the curtains. "I'm sorry I tricked you," he said. "Can you come out?" Valerie didn't want to, but then Mr. Henry said please and started untangling the curtain, and she didn't fight. When she was free from the curtain, Mr. Henry sat on the floor in front of her and didn't say anything for a long time. Valerie could feel the itch in her throat. That meant another flower was coming, but she pushed it down. She didn't want to be the first to break the silence, and especially not like that. "Did you know I used to have a boyfriend?" Mr. Henry finally said when he spoke. Valerie hadn't know that, but she didn't move. "It's a really long time ago, and I'll like him a lot, but there were some people who didn't like that I was dating him, so I broke it off and told him I hated him. I thought I was protecting him, and after that, I started having this weird pain in my throat." He reached out to take Valerie's hand, but she flinched away just enough that he gave up. "LF didn't happen so quickly for me, but after a while I started coughing, too, just like you. I pretended nothing was wrong. I started dating a woman and got engaged, and I was miserable. I was lying about what I was feeling, and those lies made it possible for the flower to grow inside me, and they would have killed me if I had kept going." This time when he reached out, she didn't flinch, and he tucked a piece of her hair gently behind her ear. "There are some secrets that are dangerous to keep," he said. "They take hold and grow until they destroy us. And I don't want you to be destroyed, Val, so please. I don't know what's bothering you so much, but you have to tell someone." The itch in the throat was growing into pain, and she held breath. "It doesn't have to be me. Whoever you want, just tell me and I'll get you to theme. But you have to talk to someone." She couldn't hold it in anymore. The flower was pushing up her throat, and she covered her mouth and coughed loudly, painfully, over and over, until she felt dizzy. She had tears in her eyes when she pulled her hands away to reveal the head of a white rose. Now he knew. He had known already because of the doctor, but now he really knew. He knew that she wasn't worth keeping, and now he would send her away. Mr. Henry took her hands in his. His hands were so much smaller than his. The flower didn't even look that big compared to his hands. Please, Val, he said, his voice sounded strange. Just tell me. Whatever it is, it's okay. Just tell me, and you'll figure it out. Valerie had never seen anyone get better from the flower sickness. Mr. Henry said he had, but Valerie hadn't really understood his story, and she didn't really want to get better anyway. Getting better meant that she wouldn't die before she was sent away. And she was so scared of that. She blinked and a tear fell down her cheek. Mr. Henry wiped it away with his thumb. Is it really so bad that you can't tell me? Valerie's lip quivered. The words were as stuck in her throat as the flowers were. Her breath hitched. She started, then sniffled. Mr. Henry's hands were warm around hers. I don't want to leave. New tears sprang from her eyes when she said it. She didn't want to leave. Not by being sent away, but not by dying either. I don't want to leave. She threw her arms around Mr. Henry neck and held on tight. Please, 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 she thought. I don't to leave. Mr. Henry put his arms around her back. You're not going anywhere, he said, stroking her back. But Val, where do you think you're going? Why don't you want to leave? Valerie was sobbing against his shoulder. When you sell me, she cried. I don't want to go. Mr. Henry's arms tightened around her, holding her closer. I'm not selling you, he said. I promise. I'm never selling you, and I'm never sending you away. He let her cry in his arms until she was exhausted, swaying on her feet when he released her. You're not going anywhere, he told her again, wiping tears off her face with his sleeve. I can prove it to you. Don't believe him, she told herself. This is where he sends you away. But she let him take her hand and lead her down the hall to his office. He opened the safe and took out a piece of paper and handed it to her. Do you know what that is? He asked. She shook her head. It's your birth certificate, he said. I had it made after you moved here. It says I'm your father, and no one will know it's not true. I wouldn't have done that if I wasn't planning on keeping you. She stared at him. He was her father. You don't have to call me dad or anything if you don't want to, he said. But that paper means that if someone tries to take you from me, I can get you back. No one is going to own you ever again. Valerie didn't really understand how the paper worked, but she knew that papers were important. Adults could be very serious about them. Never, she asked. Never ever, he promised.